Hello everyone, this is Claudia from Bubble Spark, and in this next video I will show you how to make a really nice card and using distress ink and stamping with distress inks and coloring in it. And I'm gonna use this bow bunny stamp, and I'm gonna make them look a bit 3D. These are like Japanese lampions, and I'm gonna show you how you can do that. And I'm using the properties of the distress inks that are reacting with water but that are also translucent. So I'm gonna put every one of this lampion on a separate block and I'm gonna stamp them. Of course, if you want to see exactly what products I use, please go ahead and visit the blog post. That is in the bottom corner, a link for it. So let's get started. I am using 3 colors of ink, which is Worn Lipstick, Victorian Velvet, and Wild Honey, and also Barn Door. And I'm gonna stamp each of the lampions onto the side of the card, but with different distress inks. I'm using also watercolor paper, but I'm using the smooth side of the watercolor paper. It's very hard to stamp something if you're using the other part. And the more I go to the corners, I'm stamping with the lesser sharp color, so I'm stamping kind of the lampions that are fading out. And it's okay to go around and overlap them, because you will see that because if you're using distress inks, everything is translucent and you're going to have no problem seeing from one to the other. Now I had in the same stamp set, it was really this cool flower, and I decided to add some flowers with the wild honey on the lampions, so it gives them a nice touch, I think. Now I'm putting the same colors as I used to stamp on my acrylic block, and I'm going to squeeze the brush a bit, and I'm going to start pulling the color from the lines. And this will make a really light color, and I can color in the entire lampion. Then I'm going to pick up more color with my brush, and I'm going to do the shading in the corners. It's going to be one corner down, one corner up. Also I'm adding some water to the yellow flowers just to make sure that the color spreads correctly. Now adding more color, but you can see no matter how much color I still add, I still can see the lines of the other lampion on behind. So this is what I say, that this really looks cool and transparent, but also it gives it a really nice 3D effect, because now it really looks like the front lampion is actually in front of you and the other one is in the back. Now again, I'm doing the same thing for the other one. I'm going to pull the color from the lines, and then I'm going to put darker color where I think the shading should be, like where the light comes from. There is really no rhyme or reason for how much color I put. I just have to look nice, and always remember that once it dries out, it will always kind of look more cool than when it's wet. So I'm not really too worried about it now, although I can see some strike lines, because I know they will smooth out and they will go inside the paper. Now I'm working on to the next color, which is Warm Lipstick, for the down ones, and I'm really not even going to dip my brush anymore. I'm just going to take as much color as I can and dilute it the more I go into the down part, because I want those ones that are down to fade out a bit. Remember that this will not actually be the final size of my front panel. I will cut this out, so even if I make a mistake a little bit on the sides, that part won't show, because I always, when I watercolor, I make a panel that is slightly bigger than the final size that I want, because you can never do nice on the margins. Now I'm heating it up with my heat tool, and I'm heating also on the back to make sure that it doesn't warp that much. Of course, you could have just adhered it to the work surface, but I don't really have something to adhere it with. So now I'm taking some Mr. Hewitt's and I'm tapping it off to make some splatters. And I'm using, I think it's Rudolph Red and Custard, and I'm moving the tapping into the corners and all along those lampions. Really gives it a nice effect with the splatters. Of course, it will completely ruin your work surface. Those little droplets go everywhere. You have no way of controlling them. The only way to save yourself is to use a box, but again, I didn't have one close by, so I just did it like that and cleaned afterwards. And now I'm thinking that I really need something more dark, like a black, but I didn't have a black Mr. Huey, so I used a black suit, and I'm squeezing some water there, and with my water brush I can put some droplets if I really tap hard on my water brush. Now they do look like they are 3D and so on, but I still think that if I would put some more shading with a different color on the sides, they will really pop out. But before that, I'm really heating up those splatters because I don't want them to smear whenever I touch the card. Splatters usually take longer to dry out because they have a lot of water, so sometimes I'm impatient and I ruin some cards doing that, but you know, just take your time. Of course, in this whole process I'm thinking, what can I do? So I took some iced spruce. It's like a gray blue, and I'm going to do some lines of gray blue all along those lampions where the most intense color is. I'm testing it on a piece of watercolor paper to make sure that it's really the color that I want. If you do this with Copics, you'll probably do some warm gray or something on the sides. It's kind of the same process, but it's really making them pop there. Of course, I dip my water brush in some red, but it doesn't matter. You can always clean it off with a baby wipe. So this is kind of my front panel. Now I'm gonna decide which size exactly I want, and before that I'm going to take a tag from the Simon Says Stamp tags, and I'm going to cut it from a piece of paper that looks a bit like the same colors as I used here. I'm going to use some coordinations paper, but again, I didn't have my cuttle bug with me, so I'm just gonna freehand it. I'm just placing it there, cutting with my scissors and cutting all around that tag. It's okay, you can do that. Nobody's going to mind. It's still, you're still using the die as a template. So I eyeballed it in the end. That was kind of it. Now of course I need a little hole there in the middle, so I'm using my crocodile and I'm making a mark there to where my hole should be in the middle. And that was the tag. Yay! Now because this is coordinations paper, that means it has a core, a craft core, so I'm using a sanding block, and now my camera really gets shaky, to sand some of that pink away to show the core, the craft core. And I'm using a Sentiment from You Brighten My Day set from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm gonna stamp it in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This ink is really cool and really bright, but you really have to be careful what type of stamps you're using, because if you're using like really high quality stamps like the Simon Says Stamp one, it really stamps good and dark. But if you're using like other types of stamps that are more cheaper, the ink will puddle up, but I guess any ink will puddle up with worse stamps. So I'm going to thread some baker's twine there, which is like a dark baker's twine for that tag. And I'm really making it smaller, and I'm making it 1 inch smaller on all the sides, so 4.5 by 3.25 or something like that. I'm trying not to take too much from one side, so if I'm taking 1/2 inch somewhere, I'm going to do half of it and the other half on the other side. I'm putting that sentiment on some foam dots, and I'm adhering it already so that it will be easier to put the thread or on the back side of this card. And to secure the thread there, I'm going to use just some normal Scotch tape. It's the easiest way to secure it. And then your adhesive will glide over the Scotch tape anyway. So before I adhere this to the base card, I'm rounding the corners with the 1/4 inch. And now I have to decide what color should my base card be. So I'm thinking I want to be a very bright red. And this is a basil cardstock, and I'm cutting it to 5.5 by 4.25, and I'm going to make it a side folding or an upper folding card. I think it's going to be an upper folding card, yes. Now I decided to run the corners on this one, but with the other with a 1/2 inch corner, and now it looks really cool. All I have to do is adhere it. And again, I forget to always put my panel before I put all my elements on top of it, and this is really hard to add adhesive on the back, but not impossible, of course. Nothing is impossible. So I hope you guys enjoyed my card, and give some thought into how to make with any stamps this kind of 3D effect. If you liked it, please don't forget to share it in your comments, or if you want more videos like this, subscribe to my channel. If you like more information about this card, like a supply list, go ahead and click on the blog post link that is again listed here or in the description of this YouTube video. Thanks so much for watching.